Hello everyone and welcome to the Power of Pinterest for Writers. I'm Victoria and I'm a writer and writing coach who also spends a lot of time on Pinterest. I've been using it for a few years now, but it's only in the last few months that I really started upping my game as far as using it for writing, and I have loved it and found it so useful and inspiring. It can be such a fantastic resource for writers if you know how to use it, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We'll be going over why it's important to use Pinterest to help organize your thoughts and how to use it to good effect, and we'll also be looking at some fantastic examples of good writing boards on Pinterest that have captured my imagination, and I believe they'll capture yours too. So first things first, I made a worksheet that you can use to take notes while you're watching this video. If you've already gotten it and printed it out, perfect. Just hold tight for a second. If you haven't gotten it yet, you'll find a link in the description below the video if you're watching this on YouTube, or below the video within the blog post if you're watching this from my blog, Something Delicious. So just hit pause for a second so you can print that out, and then we'll get started. Okay, so I'm assuming that a lot of you already use Pinterest, but if you don't, you might be wondering why you would use Pinterest, a very visual website, as a writer. And here's a few reasons why it's helpful. It's a really good way to keep track of settings and characters, because as writers we can have a lot of those in our mind at one time, and honestly we do not need more clutter in our mind. We need to have our focus on the story and not trying to remember who's who and what that place looks like. It's also a really good place to save helpful and inspiring writing advice so that you can easily find it when you need it, because again, we don't want to waste time as writers. We want to be able to put our time and focus where it's really important. It's also easy access inspiration when you need a prompt to kick you off, because we all get those days where it's just like, nope, I have no idea what to write about. I have no idea what this character is telling me. And another thing that I think is really cool is it's great if you're co-writing something, because you can create a group board for a story and you can both add pins and see what the other has added to the same board. So when in the writing process would you use Pinterest? You might use it when you're brainstorming a new story. You might use it when you're stuck on something specific, like a character or a setting, and you just need to kind of jog your creativity. If you're ever feeling discouraged, honestly, Pinterest is one of the best places I have found to find inspiration or just a little pick-me-up. It's also good if you're looking for advice on a particular technique or area like outlining. Now, Google is still something that you can use for this, just a general search engine, but there's something about Pinterest that just helps you find what you need when you need it. And one other thing that Pinterest offers that I really like, and this is great for writers, is the option to make public or secret boards. Because a lot of us as writers, we're not comfortable about sharing stuff about our writing too early. It might make us squeamish, or it might make us feel like we need to edit what we say, and this is a really great time to create a secret board, because you can always make it public later on, but you can't make a public board secret. And so this is great if you just need a space to get your thoughts down, your things for characters and settings and inspiration, but you're not just ready to share it just yet. One of the things that I do love about Pinterest is that it's really easy to use, even from the get-go, but there are a few general pointers that you'll want to keep in mind during your Pinterest adventures. Number one, use it as a reference, not a social network. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram. They're all great places to connect with people, and while we can do that on Pinterest as well, it's not the main focus. The main focus is to keep track of things and use it as a reference that you can go back to. And if you're just following everybody that follows you, or you feel obligated to follow people, then it's going to get out of hand very quickly. So do not fall prey to that way of thinking, and just use it for that sole purpose, and it will be a lot more fun. You can just, rather than, if there is someone that you really want to follow, you really like some of their boards, you don't actually have to follow all of their boards. You can just follow some of them at once, and I'll show you how to do that later. Now, whether you're new to Pinterest or you've been using it a while, it's worth taking a bit of time to think about what boards you want to have. I've just switched over to mine here because I'm going to use it as an example in a minute. You might have a board for each work in progress. You might have one for undeveloped story ideas, one for inspiration, one for writing advice. Like I mentioned a minute ago, it can get overwhelming very fast. So if you think that any of your boards are going to be massively overtaken by pins, you might want to narrow them down a bit. If you have a story with a gargantuan cast, for example, you might want a board just for character reference and another for everything else to do with the story. An epic novel might need separate boards for setting, characters, magical creatures, steampunk costumes, just so you can keep everything straight and find it when you need it. I, for the longest time, had all of the writing advice I had collected on one board, and you can actually still see it here, the one called Writing Inspiration, Tips and Tricks. But I recently realized that I was having a lot of trouble finding what I needed when I needed it. So I went through and I started dividing it into categories, like plotting and outlining, setting and world building, character development, one of my favorite categories, just going to be honest, writing research, ideas, life of a writer, etc. And honestly, it's just a lot easier to find what I need when I need it, and that is so useful. Once you've got your board sorted, it is time for the good stuff, pinning. And whether you're starting from scratch and want to spend a few minutes adding things to all your new boards, or you already have some in place, you'll find pins in similar ways. So let's give it a go. In terms of characters, here is the bad news. If you're looking for character inspiration, it can be one of the trickier things to find on Pinterest with a straight-up search. I sometimes luck out because there's an actor or actress I have in mind to represent at least the physical sense and maybe voice of my character, so I can look them up. But even then, you often end up with the same headshot over and over. And let's just look at one as an example. Let's try Keira Knightley. And just wait for it to load. There is a decent amount of shots here, but a lot of them are studio shots, or they might be red carpet shots, and they're not the most everyday person shots, so unless that's what you're going for, it's not going to be terribly helpful. Sometimes you luck out, that's great, and you can find good shots this way, but other times you just can't find anything that's right, or maybe you don't have someone in mind at all, and you have no starting point to go from. So, the best way I have found to solve this problem is to haunt the Pinterest boards of other writers who gather character reference photos, and there's a few in particular I'm going to point you towards because they will save you a lot of time. I'll be going back to these boards in more detail later, and I'll link to them both in the blog post and underneath the video, but I'll just show you real quick one of my favorites for this. This is a board that was created by Kristen from shesnovel.com, and it's just one example of her many fantastic character inspiration boards. This one is specifically centered around younglings, but she's also got other ones as well, and I'll show you those in a bit. But such a great variety here, and I love the idea of having a board just for kid characters. It's fantastic. What I do want to show you right now is how you can not only follow an awesome board like this, I would say follow board here, but also how you can use it as a springboard for further exploration. So say we click on, let's see, I love this photo, the light in it. And so when we click on this photo, we can pin that, and that is fantastic. It might be one you really want. But what you can also do is scroll down underneath and look at related pins. They're not always going to be helpful. A lot of these are actually a little bit older than the girl up here, but it still can be a really good spot to look. And if we click on another one, let's try this cutie. This is going to be a good one. Yeah, so sometimes what you're going to see is not just related pins here, but you're also going to see that other people have pinned it on other boards, and some of those boards might be helpful to you, like this Love and Sweetness one, maybe. I haven't been to this one. Yeah, so there's some really good inspiration here. Like, just look at this little one. She's so cute. And the face on her. But that's just a really good way to springboard off into other inspirational pins, is to click on a pin you like, scroll down, look at the other boards that it's been pinned on, and also look at the related pins. And I'm going to run away from this fast because it's too adorable. So that is easily the best way you're going to find pins for character inspiration. To sum up, find a board that is rich with pins already and still gets updated is a bonus. Save your favorites and click through to related pins and other boards and continue this process until you find what you need. But keep in mind, character inspiration doesn't just have to be about what they look like. You can have pins on your board that depict their hobbies, the food they ate on their first date, the way they dress, the book that changed their life, anything that tells you what you need to know about them. And those things are a lot easier to search for. Now, in terms of settings, there are some things that you can do that you can have a lot of fun with this. It's a lot easier to look for this. I just did a bunch of sample searches the other night just for fun to see what I could come up with. I did rainforest path, and you get a huge variety even just with a phrase like that. I also looked up tiny castle, and huge variety in here. I'm feeling stories just looking at these. You can also look things like steampunk cafe, boho bedroom, backyard treehouse, Victorian bathroom. Unless you have something very specific in mind, in which case go for it. It's really easy to find stuff. You can also just be silly and have fun and don't edit yourself. You never know what's going to spark an idea. Look for whatever pops into your head and think both exterior and interior, big and small. This is another board that I will go back to later, but Mandy has a really cool board for abandoned settings. And again, just the variety in here is amazing. And there's abandoned churches, and just looking at this is incredible and so atmospheric. So you definitely want to think of landscape as well as buildings. Pinterest is also a great way to research a place that you haven't been but you want to write about. And you can do the method we were talking about before about clicking on a pin and looking at it's also on these boards, and you can look at related pins. So maybe this one wasn't exactly what you needed, but one of the ones down here might be perfect. It might be just what you need. Like maybe you needed something more colorful rather than just part of it. And another thing you might search for on Pinterest would be writing advice. And so you might search for phrases like novel outlining or writer's block or developing characters or anything like that, and you're going to find some really good resources. Pinterest is really good that way. And that one's pretty straightforward, but one thing that I really want to go into because it's a lot of fun is using Pinterest for inspiration. And for doing this, you want to just be a little creative. And so what you can do is you can, up here by the search bar, you can click on this button and it'll bring up the general Pinterest categories. And some of the ones that you can go to just fill your imagination well with ideas. So you could click on photography, for example, and see what comes up. And there's just such a variety here, so many things you can go with, so many different styles of photography. And what you can also do is you can look at the top at these related topics, and so you can go a little more specific. Maybe something comes up here you didn't think about. Maybe you weren't thinking about black and white photography, but click on that, see what comes up. You never know. And you can also, as well as these, okay, you guys, this pin, that is fantastic. Just saying. Other categories you could go to for inspiration. You might go to the illustrations and posters. It's really cool. You might try technology, see what comes up there, or tattoos, or the crafts, or design. Really, there are so many places on Pinterest. Pinterest is just inspiration central, so use it, you guys. It's also a really good place to keep just general inspiration for when you're feeling kind of discouraged or just need a bit of a boost. I've just navigated to one of my own boards here, Inspiration for Writers, and this is where I keep the pins that sometimes I just need a little bit of a laugh or just a little bit of inspiration to remind me that this path we walk, it can be tricky, it can be hard, it can be hilarious, it can be awkward, but it's writing, it's what we do, it's what we love, and sometimes we just need a reminder of that. So that I enjoy keeping a lot of pins on that board. And then also Maggie has this board, which is a great example of how sometimes we just need a laugh. And so she keeps comics that are about writing and the writing process. And so that's another good thing to remember too when you're writing and you just need a bit of a boost, is that sometimes you just need to laugh. You need to look at something funny and just giggle, and then you can go back to it all refreshed. Pinterest is also a really good spot to use when you've got writer's block, and some fun ways to use Pinterest for that might be, as an example, pick a random pin from several of your boards, maybe a character, a setting, and a quote, and write a short story. Or have a friend send you one pin a day for a week to use as writing prompts, and whether you do writing every day on a different one, or if you use it cumulatively and combine them into one big story, that could be kind of cool. You could also choose one of the Pinterest categories at random and write a scene based on the first pin that pops up. And Pinterest categories, I'm talking about the ones up here. So just in one of these categories, just click on one and write a story about the first thing that comes up, like this magnetic slime, for example. And while we're on the topic of science and nature, this just reminds me that Pinterest is also a really good spot in terms of writing boards to keep track of any research you're doing. Like maybe one of your characters works in a profession that you have never done, but you're doing a lot of research on what the workplace would look like, the kind of people they'd be working with. Maybe, they're an astronomer or they work at a weather station, and you might have pins related to that. But it can be really fun and useful to keep a board, or more than one depending on the kind of research you need to do for your novel, and that is a really good place to keep it organized, and so that you don't get overwhelmed by a ton of bookmarks or a ton of paper that just creates so much clutter. It's so much easier to look at a visual representation of what you've got and figure out what you need. Now, I just want to go over a few more quick pointers about Pinterest before we go through some examples of some brilliant writing boards. And that is that when you're actually pinning something, and I'm just going to go back to one of my boards to use it as an example. When you're pinning something, before you pin it, you want to click through to the actual web page and make sure that the link works, the content is actually useful, it goes where it says it will, etc. And sometimes what happens is that we get a little excited when we pin something from a website and we don't realize that we're just pinning it from the overall blog or website and we haven't gone to the actual article that we want. So just using this as an example from Kristen's site, this is a pin I have, and I'm just going to go through to the website quickly. And now this, you can see in the address bar, is linked to the actual post. So no matter how many new ones she posts, this link is always going to go to this specific one. But say I had gotten a little excited, or the person who had pinned this before me got a little excited, and they had accidentally just pinned it from her main site instead. Then if it is an article that I know I really want to keep, it's not just some random one that seemed kind of interesting. If I really want it, then what you can do, you don't have to disregard the original pin completely. But what you can do is go back to it, look at what the title was. So how to write a novel outline. Just do a quick search for it. Oops. Spaces are good. And just wait for that to come up. And again, you don't want to pin from here because this is just the search, but click on the post. And now what you can do is you can either pin directly from here. There's a handy little pin it button. But also, if you already have the pin on your board and you don't want to have to delete this one and repin the other one, what you can do just go back to this and copy, just right click and copy on the link, go back to your pin, and you're going to go to edit. When you go to edit, you're going to look at website, and this would have, the way I was saying, it would have just had shesnovel.com. But what you're going to do is replace that and right click and paste. And so you've actually got the direct link now. Then you would just say save. So that's a really good way that if you get a little overzealous but you don't want to go through the thing of completely repinning it, just go grab the link and you can edit it really easily. Now in terms of things like reference photos and quotes that are just to inspire you or say how you think a character looks like, you might just need the image itself. You may not need what it actually links to. Now if your boards are private, if they're secret boards, you don't necessarily need to check the links, but if anyone else is going to be able to click on them, if you have someone else working on that secret board with you, or if it's a public board, it's a good idea to click through and make sure that the link isn't something inappropriate, spammy, or gross, basically. So that's just a good rule of thumb. One more thing, a couple of things to keep in mind with Pinterest is that you cannot rearrange your pins. We cannot click and drag them, unfortunately, like we could with an actual bulletin board, and it just doesn't work. So the way they go on are the way they stay, unless you later delete them, repin them, which is a little more trouble than it's worth. But what you can do is you can rearrange boards, and this isn't going to help you with your pins, but if you ever decide that you want to move your boards around, you can do that. You just come to your main Pinterest page that shows all of your boards, and you just click on one and drag it until it moves around, then drop it. So click, hold the mouse button down, drag it. And so that's pretty easy, and it's a nice way to do it because whenever you create a new board, it shows up at the bottom of your boards, and I like to keep all of my writing ones at the top because they're the ones that I refer to most often, and they're also the ones that other people refer to most often, so I like to keep them handy. Now, even though you cannot rearrange your pins, what you can do is you can move a pin, or you can put it on another board as well as the one it's already on. So if you just click the pin it button, this is if you want to have it both on one board and another board. You can just ignore the message saying that you've already saved it and just pick which board you want to add it to. What you can do if you don't want it on this board anymore, like say I wanted to move this one to my character development board instead of clicking pin it, you're going to click the edit button, and then I would be picking the character development board and then just say save. So now that we've gone over those pointers for using Pinterest effectively as a writer, I want to show you some examples of writers that have some fantastic boards of different kinds and sorts, and just people that are generally kicking butt on Pinterest with writing. And so I'm going to exit out of these real quick, and that one as well. And I'm going to start with Kristen, who a lot of you may know. She blogs over at shesnovel.com, and she has got so much good advice, character inspiration, genre goodies, just it's almost a one-stop shop. It is fantastic. And one thing that I love that she has is she has a board for character names, and so it's tips for naming your characters. And this is just a really cool thing that I hadn't thought of, is to have a board for this, because it is so hard sometimes to find the right name for your character. And this attention to detail is also shown in this tips for word choice. And again, it's the details, and sometimes we need a little bit of help coming up with something or reminding ourselves how to do some of the grammar and stuff like that. And so I love that. What I did mention earlier is that she has some fantastic boards for character inspiration. And she's got, for example, ones for both male and female. She divides them by hair color, which is really fun. And I love this, the wild-haired girls, and there's also a wild-haired guys one. And there is just so much to play with here, but she's got such a good variety. And to show you another example, she's got brunette boys, and she's also got, if you've got historical characters, this is another really cool idea if you tend to write historical fiction. And just having that variety, this is what I was talking about when you want to find somebody who has a rich treasure trove of character pins. These are the kind of boards you want to follow because it's just one stop, you guys. It's fantastic. She's also got some really cool storyboards, so depending on the genre you're writing in, she's got different examples, like these ones are for adventure stories. And, you know, there's different ways to define that, but there's people taking risks, doing big jumps, or just like pensively looking down a path, or on the run, or feeding chickens, and lots of good stuff there. And then she's also got this one, which is really cool for if you're writing about a mermaid and pirates, and there's some really good ones there. And so it's just something to keep in mind. If you are writing stories in a certain genre, just allow yourself to pin some stuff that has to do with that too. It doesn't all have to be specific to the character or the setting. You can think about the world and the genre you're writing in as well, and I love that. And she's got a ton of good boards along those lines, so definitely worth checking out. Another lovely lady I want to point you to is Mandy, who blogs over at mandywallace.com. And she's got, one of the things I love is she's got a lot of group boards. And group boards are really fun because you get a lot of people talking about and pinning about one specific topic. And she's got a lot of writing ones, which is really cool. And so you get so many resources because you've got this collective hive mind of people pinning stuff. And she's got one specific board dedicated to just writing advice in general, and others dedicated to specific characters and settings. And this is a really cool example of how if you've got a specific character that you want to have a board for, this is a really cool way to do it. Because for this character, Margaret, she doesn't just have pictures of what she looks like. She also has pictures of the kind of decor that she might have and the clothes she might wear. And I'm just getting a sense here of a very elegant woman, and just having that sense of character that you can go back to, and even quotes. It's really cool, and it can be really helpful when you're stuck and you're trying to remember, okay, who is this woman again? And another example she's got is this character, William, inspired by Daniel Craig. And she's got pictures with Daniel Craig in various poses and moods, which gets across a really cool sense of character. And then also, again, decor, but there's also a lot of animals and stuff on this page, and so he's obviously got some connection to that. I don't know what it is, but I'm intrigued. It's really cool. And so, like I was saying earlier, when you're pinning for your character, you can have stuff that's related to their hobbies or things about their life. It doesn't just have to be what they look like. And in terms of character development in general, she's got a really cool board about the MBTI character creation, which is the Myers-Briggs Type Index. If you ever have seen someone saying that they're an INFJ, which would be my personality type, or some of the others, then this is what that's stemming from. It's a really cool personality index that just goes into so much detail, and I gotta tell you, you guys, it's pretty much spot on. I learned so much about myself by doing that index. And what a cool idea that I hadn't considered before to think about which one your character would fall into. And so this whole board is about the MBTI character creation. So that's a really cool way to go. She's also got some neat setting boards, like if you've got scenes or a whole story set mainly in a cafe. There's some really fun examples of different cafes and settings and the people that frequent them, and some very classic and some maybe a bit more modern. And she's got home settings. So this is the thing, is that people are not going to live in generic homes. They're not all going to have subdivision houses. They're not all going to have bungalows. They're not all going to have mansions. There's going to be variety there. And this is a really good reminder that it's worth thinking about the kind of home environment that your character lives in. And it's a really cool idea to create a board that has to do with that. So if you ever need to draw on something, you know where to go. And going back to, this is what we looked at earlier, the abandoned settings. It's very cool. And moving over to Maggie, who blogs at The Wandering Quill. She's got a lovely mix of group boards, books, prompts, story specific, a couple of boards dedicated to specific authors like John Green. And I love how she divides out her writing advice boards. She's got stuff for after the draft, she's got stuff for character building, tips and advice. If there's advice given in comics, this is really fun actually. Because some people have done some really fun advice and inspiration in comics. So, and then she's also got stuff, again, going back to genre inspiration, looking at post-apocalyptic stuff. There's a lot here for if that's the kind of story you're writing. And again, that genre inspiration, so helpful. And another thing that she does that I think is really cool, she's got this board for costumes and accessories. And it's just, again, good reminder, it's not just about the way someone looks, it's about where they live, it's about the way they dress, it's about everything that makes up their life. And having a board that's dedicated to different ways of dress, and maybe some more opulent or some more everyday, depending on the kind of stories you tend to write. It's a really good idea of a board to have. That is incredible. I'm drooling over that right now. And she's also got a board for unplotted tales, so inspiration for stories planted but not yet sprouting. Really neat idea to have a board for a story that maybe isn't full-fledged yet, but you want to keep that little bit of inspiration so that you don't forget it. She's also got a board of useful information, so different information you might need depending on your story, because we all know the kind of research that gets us in trouble on Google if we were ever investigated. It's all here. So that's really handy to have. And going back to specific storyboards for one that she's working on, she's got this one for an Atlantis trilogy that she's working on. And so there's some character inspiration here. There is stuff about the world in general she might build, some of the creatures and settings, and really fun. If you're going to have one board for your whole story, this is a really good example of how you might want to do it. You want to remember to just go into a little bit of everything so that you've got everything covered. And that's one we were looking at earlier. And this one, honestly, it's pretty fun because sometimes we need that kick in the butt to just be like, you know what, you should really be writing. You should not be on Pinterest. Why are you here looking at this? You need to write. And last but not least, the final board or pinner we're going to go to today is Jenny, who blogs over at Blots and Plots. And you know, one of the things I love about her boards is just the aesthetic of the cover photos. And I'm going to show you guys something about this in a minute, but her boards just remind me a lot about, this is why I love being a writer, because it's about books, it's about laughs, it's about libraries, maybe coffee or just cozy drinks, but it's about the life of a writer, and I think that's really cool. And she's got this board that's gifts for writers and readers, which is a lot of fun. There's some really, really fun stuff on here. But it's just another reminder that writing doesn't have to be all serious and just keeping ourselves just down in the dark by our computer every day. There is fun stuff about it, and there's a reason that we love doing this. And she's got this book art, which again, it's a really good reminder of why we're doing it. We love books. We love to read. And there's just, that's, yeah, fantastic cover on a classic book. And you know what, guys? Isn't this why we write? It's so that people will still read in a toque in a snowstorm. This is why we do it, you guys. We write because we love it. We write because it's fun. And her boards really, they remind me of that, and I love that. She's got a really amazing quote board. I love quotes for inspiration if I'm just having a bad day or a bad writing day. Quotes are my go-tos. So helpful and definitely help me turn my day around. And again, just snuggling with books because reading is better with friends. This is a lot of fun and there's a lot of really cute faces on here. And writing prompts, this is another thing that you can definitely do, you guys. You can have a board that's full of prompts if you ever need one, because there are so many of them on Pinterest, and there are some that are going to hit you and there are some that won't. So keep the ones that are your favorites. You never know when you might need them. And again, another really cool reminder of just, it's about the books, it's about the reading, it's about the stories. We tell stories. We are so incredibly lucky, you guys. And then the last one I'm going to go to, it's just kind of fun. It's fandoms. It's, you know, this is the thing about books. They come to life in our minds and hopefully in our readers' minds. And I think this is a really fun reminder of that, is just the fandoms that have come not just from movies but first from books, because they did live on in readers' minds and they became even bigger than they were in the mind of a reader. And so having some inspiration about that, reminding you of that, I think that can be incredibly powerful. One more thing that I wanted to mention, you guys, that I thought of from looking at Jenny's fantastic board covers is I just want to go to one of my boards and show you something real quick, which is just two things. Number one, how to change the cover of your board so that it's useful and reminds you what's on it. So to do that, on this page where you've got all your boards, you're just going to click on the one and click on Edit. And then to see here where it says Cover, you're going to click Change. And then you can cycle through the different, this is all the different pins you've got on that board, and you can pick the one that just evokes it the most to you. And once you've picked one, you can also click and drag it so that you're showing your favorite part. I really like the cover I already have for this one, so I'm just going to hit cancel, but that's how you would do that. Also, if you do want to, if you're co-writing a book with someone and you want to add them to your board, this is where you would do it on the edit spot. You would just go down to collaborators and then put in either their name or their email and invite. And it's that easy. They just have to accept the invitation and then you can both pin to the board, and it is fantastic. It's a great resource for co-writers. So with that being said, you guys, we are at the end of our Pinterest tutorial, the power of Pinterest, and I had a lot of fun with this today, and I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, if you found it helpful, I would love it if you went ahead and shared it, hashtag POP for writers, power of Pinterest, and let me know what you think. And contact me with any questions you have or suggestions for future videos. I would love to hear them. And thank you so much for being here today, guys. And this was a blast. All of the links that I mentioned in the video today will be below the video on YouTube, and they will also be in the blog post. So anything you want to go back to, they will be there. And I hope you've been filling out your worksheet, because there'll be a few tips on there as well for you that I really hope you go back to and give them a try. So thanks again, and have a fantastic day. Happy writing.